I'm Bud Filippo. What I said I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the pitfalls, temptations, and greed in the entertainment field. I was 29 years old working for the president of a Fortune 500 company with a very promising career. Came home one day and I said to my wife, Rosemary, I hate what I'm doing. I hate my job. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go into the entertainment field. She said, do it. I know you'll be successful. The only job I could get was an assistant trainee at a concert management firm, earning $75 a week. We were married. We had 3 children, a 4th on the way. We owned a house. We had a mortgage, a car. We belonged to a country club. I took the job, and we struggled. At 32, I produced my first New York show. Once your name is up on that marquee, you're invited to opening nights, to parties, and so on. I was invited to the opening of this show. Rosemary couldn't make it. She had to stay home and watch the children. I went. It was the first time they were going to have synthesizers and electric guitars instead of an orchestra. After the show, I went backstage to talk to the musicians. When I came out, the lobby was empty except for 2 women. A middle-aged woman and a very beautiful, beautiful young woman. Middle-aged woman said to me, Mr. Filippo, are you going to the opening night party up on Park Avenue? I said, yes. She said, can we share a cab with you? Sure. We get to the party. The middle-aged woman disappears. The young one latches onto me like she's with me. We're there about an hour. She turns, looks me straight in the eyes and said, wouldn't you like to come up to my apartment on 57th and 2nd Avenue? I know you'll find it very cozy. Now, my father, and that young woman was a Miss America. So anyone who tells you he wasn't tempted is either a liar or dead. And I was not dead. But my father said you cannot allow circumstances to happen. You cannot take that first step. I said to her, I'm supposed to take the train home, and my wife's going to meet me at the station. Let me call her, tell her I'm going to catch a very late train. I'll take a taxi home. I go into the bedroom, I call Rosemary, and I said, honey, you be at that station to meet me. She said, is everything all right? I said, yes. I'll tell you when I get home. I get home, I tell her what happened. We decided that very night we would get full-time sleep-in help. I think I was part of that decision. I'm not sure. So it meant sacrifices. We didn't go on vacation. We didn't buy furniture. There were a lot of things we didn't do. But Rosemary came into the city 2-3 nights a week. I never went to another opening night party without her. As my father said, you cannot allow circumstances to happen. You cannot allow lust to steal your morals, because your morals have a direct effect on your relationship with your wife, your family, your friends, and the people you work with. Now, I had a young secretary in the office, about 19, very, very shapely. She wanted to be a singer-dancer. When she took the job, she said, Mr. Filippo, would you be my agent? Because very often in New York, if you don't have an agent, they won't audition you. I said, sure. Now, my offices were on 57th and 7th Avenue, right across from Carnegie Hall. At the bottom of the building was a coffee shop, very popular, where dancers, actors, singers, musicians hung out. She comes up after she's been working for me about 6 months. She comes up one day and she says, Bud, I met 2 men in the coffee shop and they want me to cut a record for them. I said, Linda, they never heard you sing. I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's legit. She says, you're probably right. And that was it. 2 days later, she comes up even more excited. Bud, they want me to cut a whole album for them. And they're going to promote me all over the country. I said, Linda, if you want me to tear up the contract with you, I will, but I wouldn't go and do it. She says, no, no. And that was it, I thought. That afternoon, I get a call from an attorney who I know represents the mafia. He said to me, Mr. Filippo, I have a client very interested in Linda. And then he asked me, are you sleeping with her? I said, no. He said, if you're sleeping with her, we'll forget the whole thing. If you're not, is it worth getting all bloodied up for? And I was scared. I said to him, look, if Linda wants to sign the contract, I'll tear up my agreement with her. But she doesn't want to sign. He said, I'm going to keep you to your word. He said, if she wants to sign, you'll tear up the agreement, and he hung up. Next morning, Linda comes in and says, Bud, I'm going to sign the agreement. Linda, what happened? Now, she came from a poor family in Brooklyn, and she lived with them. She said, the two men came to our apartment last night. They said to my parents they would pay their rent every month. They would pay all their expenses. They would give them a monthly allowance. They would give me $3,000, buy me a whole new wardrobe, and promote me all over the country. I tried to talk her out of signing the contract for about 15 minutes or so, and then she said, Bud, I have to. My father's downstairs with the two men waiting for me to go down there and sign. I tore up the agreement. She went down. She's obviously signed the contract with them. For the next 3 months, I see Linda around Carnegie Hall, getting in the limo, out of a limo, waving from a limo, and then I don't see her again. No one hears from her. I often wondered, was I strong enough in trying to convince her not to do it? Or was I afraid, and so I didn't really push her as much as I should have? I'll never know the answer. I never found out what happened to her. Anyway, shortly after that, by a strange set of circumstances, I end up booking the Beach Boys at the height of their career for 3 or 4 years. I booked their concerts. I booked the concert tours for the Diana Ross and the Supremes, the Loving Spoonfuls, Simon and Garfunkel, Herman's Hermits. It was very exciting. But what you see is what I was like then. I had a crew cut. I used to wear a white shirt, collared striped tie, herringbone tweed jacket, gray charcoal pants. I was the farthest thing from a hippie that you could imagine. So sometimes when the Beach Boys came into town, I would always book them and rent the top floor of the plaza for them, hotel. Because if I booked rooms and one room was smaller than any of the others, I'd never hear the end of it. After work, often, when they were there, about 6:30, I would go up to the hotel, talk to Mike Love, Carl, Dennis, and around 7 o'clock, the camp followers, as I call them, the guys, the girls would come in. Out would come the booze, the marijuana, and so on. And the party would start. At that point, Mike or Carl would say, okay, out loud, okay, Bud, it's time for you to go. And they'd grab me by the arm and lead me out into the elevator. They knew I didn't belong there. All I could do was get into trouble. So I would leave. What you do is what you are, it's what you believe, it's what you think. They knew I didn't belong there. I knew it. I left, and that was the end of it. Now, they were at the height of their popularity. When we would do a tour, and we would play the big cities like Philadelphia, Boston, Miami, so on, we wouldn't get a local promoter. We would literally promote the concerts ourselves. We'd hire a local promoter just to handle incidentals and pay him a fee. In all of those concert dates, they never once questioned the box office count that I gave them. I have a saying, men of genius are admired. Men of wealth are envied. But only men of morals and principles are trusted. They knew I didn't belong at the party. They made me leave. They knew I wouldn't cheat them. They never questioned the box office. We are what we do. Okay? I have often questioned people, and I've said, what would you have done? Would you have stayed, or would you have gone? And only you can answer that question. But what you do is what you are. Shortly after that, the musical Hair opened up off-Broadway. And I acquired all the rights to produce it all over the country except New York. Now, the New York producer and the company manager decided to take the show uptown to Broadway. They're going to rehearse for 2 weeks, do previews for 2 weeks, and then they're going to open. 4 days before opening night, Mike, the producer, called me and said, Bud, we're not going to make it. No one is coming to the theater. And then he said, Ragnu, who was one of the writers of the lyrics and the book, wants to put nudity into the show. Then Mike said, but if we put nudity into the show, they're going to close us. I said, well, if you don't put nudity into the show, they're going to close you anyway. The next day, they decide to put nudity into the show. Rosemary and I go to opening night. It is packed. Every critic you can imagine wants to be there. Just before intermission, most of the cast is nude. And then they do something that really bothered me. And Rosemary, really upset us. They take the cross and they use it in the most disrespectful way. Now, Rosemary and I are Catholic, we're Christian, upset us no end. During intermission, we had come with another couple. Rosemary's in the lobby with that couple and talking to some friends that she's met there. I'm with McDermott, the composer of the music, and Shapiro, the associate producer, and we're walking toward Rosemary. Now, there is always a point in the intermission when the noise quiets down and there is a lull in the lobby. It's during that lull that my wife, and I never hear her use language like this, her voice rises up and she says, "This is the worst piece of crap I've ever seen in the theater." She doesn't realize it. She's standing back to back with Mike, the producer of the show. He turns, and if he could have, he would have killed her. McDermott and the associate producer, they start yelling at me, "Shut your wife up, shut your wife up." I said, Rosemary has a right to say what she thinks. I walk up to her to tell her to calm down and speak more softly, and before I could say anything, she says, "Bud, we're leaving. I don't want to see the second act." And we left. Now, the critics love the show. The reviews are sensational. The next day, there are lines miles long out of the box, in front of the box office. And my rights are suddenly worth more than several millions of dollars. But I am torn. I'm torn between my morals and the money. For 2 days, I'm debating what I should do. And Rosemary makes me understand I cannot produce that show and talk to my children, we had 5, about principles the sanctity of sex, or our religious beliefs. As I say, at the end of 2 days, I called Mike, the producer, up, and I said, Mike, I'm giving you back the rights. He said, yeah, but how much do you want for it? I said, nothing. He was stunned. He couldn't believe it. He said, nothing? I said, no. I want no part of that show. I gave back the rights, and I've never regretted it. After that, people would say to me, Rosemary did that, and you're still married? And I said, yes, we're still married, happily married. You have to do what you believe is right. You, again, are what you do. I gave up those rights. I have never regretted it. Now, between the shows and the rock groups, I was making a lot of money. I thought I was king of New York. You cannot imagine the power, the ego, when everyone in the business knows you and your name is in the papers, even in the social columns. But beware, even the mighty fall. I and a friend of mine did some of the publicity for Woodstock. After Woodstock, I decided I would do my own rock festival. I buy 850 acres up in the Catskill Mountains. I lease another 750. I actually built the site, a compound, 6-foot-high walls, large enough to hold 200,000 people. We built a big stage in it. We actually have running water, toilets, everything. 2 weeks before we're to open, I have more than 25,000 young people there. And then I start to get injunctions. I'm enjoined by the New York State Attorney General, the New York State Police, the New York State Health Department, the Hotel and Resort Commission of the county. I am even enjoined by the Catholic Church. I end up on trial in New York State Supreme Court for 2.5 months. During the trial, I'm on the witness stand, and one of the attorneys gets up and he starts to question me in such a way as to indicate that I'm connected to the mob. The judge starts pounding his desk. He said, everyone in my office right now, I have 2 attorneys. The other side had 6. We go into the office of the judge, and he puts his hand, he has 2 big dossiers on his desk. He puts his hand on one and says to the other attorneys, you have had the police commission investigating Mr. Filippo for the last 5 months. They haven't found one thing that either hints or suggests that he has any connection to the mob. They said, I don't want to hear any more talk about it. He said, that's the end of it. I was happy. But I thought to myself, what if I had sold drugs on the ground? What if I had taken money from the mafia? They would have put me in jail and thrown the book away. At the end of the 2.5 months, the judge comes to a decision. He's going to allow me to open, but I can only have 25,000 people. Well, I couldn't make it with 25,000 people. I had Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, the Grateful Dead, the band, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. It was impossible. For almost a year, I tried to get the decision changed. I can't. At the end of the year, I closed the place down. By now, I personally owe almost $2 million. And my attorney and other friends say, Bud, go into bankruptcy. Don't give up all your money. Protect it. But I'm first generation American. And I was brought up that you paid your debts. I owed mostly small companies, subcontractors, who if I didn't pay the $25, $50, $75, $100,000 that I owed them, they would have gone broke. I paid, or I should say we paid, 90 cents on the dollar. I say we because Rosemary helped me. We sold everything we had. The only thing we didn't sell was our home and one car. And that's because my attorney, when I went into the business, made me put it under Rosemary's name. I was so broke, I had to close my offices, and I didn't know how I was going to put food on the table. But we have an obligation to feed our family. It was 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. Saks Fifth Avenue in New York was hiring people for the Christmas holidays. I took a job at Saks selling pajamas. Now, if you know anything about the store, there are two entrances on Fifth Avenue, one here and one there. Right behind this one entrance is the counter where I'm selling pajamas to stars that I know and people who used to work for me. But there is no shame in work. The only shame would have been if I had abandoned my family, and I would never do that. I also have a theory that morals and principles pay off. It was about a month after that Paramount Pictures started looking for someone who knew marketing, production, and business affairs, contracts, negotiations. They called me and asked me to interview. I had experience in all three. At the end of the interview, they said, Bud, you have exactly the experience we're looking for, but you know nothing about the movie business. And they didn't hire me. Well, between losing everything, closing down my offices, and now being rejected by Paramount, I lost all my self-confidence. Even though about 10 days later, Paramount called me back and said, Bud, we can't find anyone who has your experience in all three areas. We're going to hire you and try it. They literally paid me to learn the movie business. But I was afraid to make decisions. I was afraid that if I made the wrong decision, they would fire me. Now, I had a department under me that reviewed all the contracts, producers' contracts, stars, writers, directors. If there was something wrong, people would come to me and point it out. I would make a decision as to what should be done or how it should be handled, and I would call the person in charge and tell him. That person would issue the memo or go to the meeting and say what I came up with, and he would get all the credit, or she. But again, I was afraid to make decisions. So I came home and I told Rosemary what was happening. She was mad. She said, you're doing all the work and let everyone else take the credit. But as I said, I couldn't take a chance of losing that job. Now, one of the areas that I learned was merchandising. And Paramount was the first one to go into merchandising in a big way. I set up the operation, but not the sales. Lou Midling was in charge of sales and merchandising. I couldn't match him. He was brilliant. But I reviewed all of his licenses. And if there was a problem, I would call Lou. We would settle it on the phone. He liked the fact that I didn't make a big to-do about it, and we became friends. I was at Paramount 4 years, and he calls me one day and he said, Bud, I'm flying in from California specifically to have lunch with you. If anyone asks, I'm coming in to review the merchandising procedures and policies. We meet for lunch at the Metropolitan Club. After we eat, he suddenly said to me, "Bud, you are one of the smartest men at Paramount, but you're never going to go anywhere." He said, "You're doing all this work and you let everyone else take the credit. Let me give you a secret. 75 to 80% of the time, the decisions you make are going to be right. 10 to 15% of the time, no one's going to be sure if they're right or wrong. And the 5% of the time when you are wrong, you're right so often, no one's going to want to criticize you." I came home and I said to my wife, Rosemary, "Lou Middling says I do all the work and let everyone else take the credit." She gets furious. Says, "What have I been telling you for the last 4 years?" It was true. I realized that I was not being honest with myself. I was not applying the same morals and principles where I was concerned. Starting the next day, when anyone called with a problem, or my people came in with a problem, I would say, "Let me think about it, I'll get back to you." Then I would write the memo with what I thought should be done. I would send it out, and I would get all the credit. Within a year and a half, the outside consultants for Paramount recommend me for a big job at Time Inc. Films. They recommend me for head of production. Time Inc. calls me and they said, "We'd like you to come up for an interview at 7:15 at night." I thought, that's a strange time to be going up for an interview. But I went. They spent over 2 hours grilling me. And when it was done, they said, "We want to offer you the job." They never interviewed anyone else. And then they said, "Beside heading up production, we want you to review all the operation." I said, "Fine." They gave me a great offer. I have to tell you, great perks. They wanted me. They paid all my country club dues, all my entertaining expenses. If I ordered liquor at the house, they paid it. So I grabbed it, right? We all would. So I took the job, and what I find out is the two men who had this position beforehand were building empires. They were hiring so many people that the departments didn't know what to do. So, what's your first name? Connor. Connor's department would issue a memo, copy 5 other departments. Your name?
Jeff.
Jeff's department, they would issue a memo, copy 6 other departments. People were filing galore. Here we had all this filing and paperwork with only 3 movies that we're producing. I end up reviewing all the operations, and when I'm done, we let go of 286 people. Yeah, those men were building empires, but they were being unfair to the people that they hired. Those people didn't deserve to get fired, but we had no work for them. Anyway, we started to revamp all the operations. I would like to say it turned out great, but I don't know. Because just about that time, I get a call from the Vice President, Chief Financial Officer of United Artists. United Artists had just released Heaven's Gate. I don't know if you ever heard of the movie, but Heaven's Gate was one of the worst financial disasters in the movie business. It cost millions and millions of dollars, and it opened and closed in 3 days. Anyway, I meet with the financial vice president, and he tells me, "You know, the man who had your job, we question how he handled it. when this man retired, he had a beautiful duplex apartment in one of the most expensive places in Manhattan. He had a gorgeous home in Palm Beach, and he had a private plane. How did he do it? What he did is, when you place advertising, you hire an ad agency. The agency places money with the ad agency to buy ads. It could be $20, $40 million. The agency gets 15% of that. The guy I replaced was getting 5% or 1/3 of that. You do the math. Figure out how much he made. Anyway, financial vice president says, we'd like you to take the job. Makes me an offer I can't refuse. I take it, and I discover what the guy was really doing. Anyway, the marketing budget in those days was $140 to $160 million. A lot of money for one person alone to control. Not only did he make money from the ad agencies, but he also made money from producers, from the other vendors. There was a producer who was doing one of the major, very, very successful, a lot of successful movies. He was renting a suite at the Plaza Hotel in New York for $12,000 a month. And every month he would send the bill to my predecessor. My predecessor would pay it. I come on board. I get the bill the first month. I call him and said, I'm not paying it. I said, you're not in New York to do any publicity or promotion. You don't have a movie out. Well, the first thing he does is tries to bribe me. He said, I'll give you what I gave your predecessor, $500 every month in cash, in your mailbox, no questions asked. I told him, no dice. Then he threatens me. He said, I'm going to go talk to the chairman and the president, and she'll see about this. Well, he goes and talks to them. Oh, I know, I forgot one more thing. When the financial vice president said, we want you to take the job, and I said yes, he said, well, I can't hire you. I have to send all the information on you and the deal to the board of directors, and they have to approve you. So I don't hear anything for 2 solid weeks. After that, all I do is get a simple letter in the mail saying, we've hired you, this is the amount, welcome on board, and the date. This producer goes to the chairman, the vice chairman, and he complains. They tell him, look, we can't do anything about it. He was hired by the board of directors. Then I knew why. Challenging a producer, particularly a very successful one, is extremely touchy. But you have to live by what you believe. You have to live by your morals and integrity. To make it short, over the next period of a year or so, I fire 15 top executives, senior VPs, VPs, and directors. Every one of them was taking money under the table. Not one of them ever got a job again in the entertainment field. You cannot abandon your morals and principles. You can't let greed steal your conscience and still expect to succeed. Anyway, again, I lost my thought. Oh, okay. At that point, and I'm cutting this a little short, at that point, I thought I had become very powerful. Very, in the industry. But around that time, Kurt Kerkorian, who owns MGM, buys United Artists. And they decide they're going to close United Artists down and take just 6 of the top executives, including myself, to California. At that point, MGM was only doing 4 or 5 movies a year. And Kirk wanted to rebuild the MGM studio back to doing 20 to 24. And that's what we went out there to do. Anyway, I'm there about 5 months. No, let me go back. When I go to Hollywood, I was not well received. The executives out there didn't think that anyone from New York deserved any respect. They challenged me. They didn't like the fact that I had to approve everything they wanted to do. I had put in a commitment system in New York that before any of the executives could buy anything, do anything, they had to issue a commitment form. They signed it, the vice president of the area signed it, and then I signed it. And I forgot one more step. To help me, I had hired at United Artists, I hired 2 consultants, and we put this whole system in. At first, I was signing and approving every purchase commitment. So I would find out what everyone was doing. I found out in the stills department that my stills people were paying 2.5 times, 49 cents for a still, a copy of a photo. That was 2.5 times what it really cost. I fired the manager, the director and the manager of that department because they were both taking money under the table. The man who we were giving the business to, he comes up, he tries to bribe me. I told him no dice. I also told him that we could not do business with him anymore, and he was no longer welcomed at United Artists. Anyway, just giving you a little more. This all happened, this commitment system, before I went to California. So with that commitment system, I took the same system out to California. So the executives out there didn't like the fact that I approved everything. Now, I've got to go back once more. Sorry, guys. I'm not used to talking to such a small crowd. It's getting me a bit, but you're a nice group. I couldn't sign and approve all of these purchase commitments myself. So I decided to hire a controller of marketing for UA in New York. That's where we were. The best person for the job was a black woman, and I hire her. She was the first black female executive in the movie business. Now, some of the men and women in management hated the idea that a black woman, I gave a black woman the power to approve or disapprove what they wanted to do. But she was the best person, best qualified, who applied for the job. You cannot have any color where morals and principles are concerned. You have to do what's right by the people who come for the job. Carolyn was excellent. I trusted her. I never regretted it. When I went to California, I insisted that she come with me. She's the only one I took. That's how good she was. As I said, the people out there resented the fact that someone from New York was going to approve whatever they wanted to do. So I hold my first MGM marketing meeting. And there are two vice presidents, one of creative advertising, the other one publicity. Now, they've been in Hollywood a long time. They know everyone, and they're very powerful. They decide they're going to get rid of me. They have the fellow who's president of the company that makes trailers. Trailers are the previews you see in the movies. They have him call me and set up a meeting to meet me that afternoon at 4:30. He comes to the meeting and he said, I'm not going to abide by your purchase system, because the system they had there, my purchase commitment, was you gave the company $250,000 to do a trailer. If the trailer didn't come out well, you'd give them another $250 or $500. My procedure was we gave them $5,000 to $10,000 for a look-see, roughs. If we liked it, we started feeding them $25,000 at a time, maybe $30,000. By the time it hit $50,000, $80,000, you pretty much had an idea of whether you liked it or not. If you didn't like it, you canceled it and you started again. He came to the meeting and he pointed at me and he said, I'm not going to follow that procedure. I want all my money and that's it. $250,000 to $500,000 when I'm going to do a trailer. I said to him, look, if you're not willing to follow procedure, then MGM can't do business with you. He gets infuriated. He points his finger again at me and he says, you pack up and be ready to be out of here. You'll be out of here in 45 minutes. I'm going up and talk to the president and you're not going to be here anymore. Well, he and the president were very good friends. He goes upstairs, comes back down a half hour later with his tail between his legs. He said, the president said, if I wanted to do business with MGM, I have to do what you want, or MGM can't do business with me. In that one incident, I became a power in Hollywood. Now, you have to understand what happens in Hollywood. There are no secrets. And the worst people out there are the executive secretaries. They want to show that they know everything. So anything like that, they start calling all around and telling their other executive secretaries. Well, of course, you know what happens. Within 2 hours, all of Hollywood knows. Hollywood's not big. There are only 7 companies, guys. That's it. So it doesn't take long for this information to disseminate. As I said, I become a power in Hollywood. But my wife, Rosemary, always reminds me that power and ambition have to be tempered with compassion. Power and ambition have to be tempered with compassion. So I'm going to tell you a funny story about compassion. When I get out there, as I said, they don't like me. So they put my parking place at the farthest end of the parking lot. I didn't know that there was a pecking order to where you're supposed to park. Anyway, my division also ran the parties, all the opening night parties, the premieres, everything. Teddy Hatfield, my vice president of publicity, he was in charge of setting up a list of who was to be invited. He calls me and says, Bud, I want to review the list for you with this party. It was my first party. It was for Barbra Streisand. Now, little background. Barbra had been terribly panned with every movie she did. Hello, Dolly, Funny Girl, all of them. The critics didn't like her. She did Yentl for us. Had not been released. But the chairman and president wanted to give her a party. And we give a party for about 70 of the top people in Hollywood or friends of hers. The night of the party, and when Teddy brings the list down, I noticed that some of the executives were not on the list. Arnie Shupek, who's head of studio operations, the senior vice president of finance, senior vice president of distribution. I said to Teddy, Teddy, why aren't they on the list? He said, Bud, if you put them on the list, you make them important. And no one in Hollywood wants to make anyone else important. I said, Teddy, if that's what's going to make me important, I don't belong here. Put them on the list. The night of the party, Arnie and the others can't thank me enough for inviting them and their spouses. The next morning, it's 10:30 in the morning. I'm sorry if I'm laughing. I still remember it. Artie sticks his head into the doorway of my office, says out loud so all the secretaries can hear, Bud, we moved your parking lot right up front. You're in the first spot. It wasn't arguing. It wasn't demanding. It wasn't getting nasty that moved my parking space, but compassion. Something else happened that night. After that party, a camaraderie developed among the executives that hadn't existed before. We became friends. I'm not saying buddy, but friends. And it was great. Anyway, there's another story about compassion, and it's not so funny. I'm there about 5-6 months, and the chairman and president decide that with the combination of the two companies, although they only took 6 people out to Hollywood, they wanted to cut the staff 25%. What I found out is that a lot of people had been at MGM for years, and because of the union giving constant raises, they were earning far more than what their job called for. I had a man who had been with MGM 40 years. He started right after high school at 17 as an assistant publicist. He became the one who took pictures of Earl Flynn, of Clark Gable, Marlene Dietrich. You know, you see some of those great old pictures? He was the photographer. I get to the meeting, and what I find out is he's at the top of the list that the chairman wants to fire. And he said to me, oh, his name was Katz. He also ran the tours. So when the buses came on the studio, he would take them around and guide them. To the people on the bus, he was Mr. MGM. Get to the meeting, and the president says right out of first thing, you have to fire him. I said, Frank, his name was Frank, the chairman. We can't fire him. I said, he has no family, he has no one. MGM's his whole life. I said, if we fire him, he's lost. He looked at me, he said, are you challenging me? You challenging me? He said, I'll tell you what. You come back tomorrow morning and tell me how you're going to save his job without costing this company 1 penny, or else. And that or else meant I would be out of there. I came home that night and I said to Rosemary, honey, I'm going to be fired. The next morning I go back. First words out of Frank's mouth were, well, I said, Frank, let's let him, give him one of the offices that we are not using. Let's have the switchboard answer his phone, Mr. Katz's office. And let's have him continue with the tours and give him $200 a week so that with the $200 plus his pension, he can live. Well, the chairman thinks about it for 5 seconds or more. 5 of the longest seconds of my life. And finally he says, I like that, but you will be sure you don't spend $1 more than those $200 a week. And then he smiled. He knew he had me. I said, fine, Frank. Now, you sometimes wonder what comes of something like that. I also get a call from Frank and from Kokorian. They want to dedicate the movie house on the MGM studio to Cary Grant. And they want us, my division, to do a party for Cary Grant. And they want no money spared. This turns out to be the most lavish party that almost ever happened in Paramount. He invites 200 of the top people in Hollywood, and they're invited to bring a guest or their spouses. I spend $700,000 on that party. I bring over orchids from Hawaii that only bloom at night. All along the red carpet, from the theater to the sound stage where the party's going to be held, I have live violinists playing music. Inside are two statues, ice statues carved of two lions. They're 6 feet high. I had chandeliers brought in, 6-foot wide chandeliers, put all over the soundstage. It was beautiful. Anyway, the night of the premiere of the party, that was going to be dedicated first to honor him in the theater. Rosemary and I go, we get out of the limo, we're on the red carpet, we walk halfway down the red carpet, and Katz suddenly steps out. He says, stop, stop. We stop, and he calls all the press photographers over to take our picture. Now, you have to understand, in Hollywood, you see pictures of stars, directors. You never see pictures of executives. That's taboo. But he had them take our picture. And you cannot imagine the envy, the jealousy on the part of the other executives, particularly the wives. They were furious. Anyway, it was Katz's way of thanking me for what I did. He had found out that I saved his job as much as I could. What you do to help people will come back not with money, but with friendship. And it was a beautiful thing and something I have always cherished.
It's time to take a break.
Time to take a break.
Take a break.
Wow. Okay. I obviously left the business. Okay. So what I thought I'd do is talk about some of the stars. Okay. I think you've heard enough about my experiences, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about Britney Spears. You're laughing. Let me tell you, I feel sorry for Britney. Now, coming from a fellow and a person like me, an adult, a lot of you must say, wow, why does he feel sorry for her? Let me explain something. Britney was born in Louisiana. Her mother pushed her into the business. Her father was a contractor. He also drank, and he was away from home a lot. When she was 10 years old, the mother took her and went to New York. And the mother tried to make her a Broadway baby, which didn't quite succeed, although she did star in Star Search. Remember Star Search? Searching? You showed your talent and so forth. Well, she went on that, and through that, she became a member of Mickey Mouse Club, which made her. But the mother treated her like a piggy bank. Brittany was making a lot of money, young girl, 14, right, doing the show for Disney and sort of starring in it. The mother signs a contract as her guardian and with herself, where Brittany gets 40% of what, the mother gets 40% as a commission of what the mother makes. But that's not only it. All of Jamie Spears, Lynn Spears was the mother's name, all of Lynn's travel, her clothes, her expenses, taxes, everything she charged to Brittany's account. You're lucky you have parents who care for you. Because at 15 years old, she's now a big star with Mickey Mouse. She goes out on tour. 3 weeks. 15 years old. Where is Lynn, the mother? The mother's home in Louisiana. She lets a 15-year-old girl travel by herself. Well, I don't have to tell you what happens. She ends up taking up with Timberlake. You know what Timberlake is? All right. 15. Mother doesn't give her any guidance. All she's concerned about is her share of the money. Now, Brittany becomes a big pop star. But at 17, she has a big record deal. And the mother takes most of the money. Everyone in the family was living off Brittany. The mother puts her younger brother, her younger sister on the payroll and pays them all out of what Brittany's getting. Brittany has no guidance, not taught anything about right or wrong or morals. She's taken up at 15 with a guy already, and then she takes up with others. She's not a happy girl. She's not a happy woman. Yeah, she starred in shows for Disney, but she's gone from guy to guy. She's not happy. And she hates her mother, hates the mother. Is this the kind of life? What's her life like? She's alone. Yeah, she has a big house, but she's living all alone. And all the mother wants and did was to push her into record deals and to going out on concerts, on tours. But the mother took the money. And when Brittany hit 18 and got to control herself, she had no money. She had no money. She ended up hating the mother. I say this because I want you to understand, we see only the glamour. We are on the front side of the stage. But behind the stage, it's not all as glamorous or as great as it seems. You might say, well, she's still Britney Spears, but I have to tell you, she's used. She's used goods. Who's going to marry her? Except for her money. She's been kicked around, everything. Very sad. Very sad. The one who should be put in jail is the mother. The mother pushed her into everything that she did wrong. Everything. She wasn't there to guide her. Your mother brought you here.
Yes, sir.
You better believe it. I liked her right away. She wanted to see who you were going to be who was talking to you, everything else. Love her. Brittany would die to have that. She has nothing. You may think she has a lot of money. She's in a glamorous home and all. Empty life. Empty. And then she had taken up with Timberlake for quite a while. And a lot of people thought they would get married back when she was a little young, not now. Why didn't she? Why didn't they get married? He found her cheating on him with someone else. I forget who it was, but another performer. And he left her. I don't blame him. I don't blame him. And she's nowhere. Nowhere. Very, very sad. You have to live by your morals and principles. You may think these stars are very happy, their lives are glamorous, but I want to tell you something. You go home to an empty house. It could be a mansion, but you're all alone every night. That's not a great life. It's just sad. I can't understand parents who would do that. But I don't want you to be have these great illusions that these stars and rock singers are, oh, they have a great life, it's wonderful. Not just Britney. What about Lindsay Lohan? What do you know of her? Yeah. Not too much. Yeah. Well, she grew up in Woodlawn, Long Island. Now, she came from a pretty comfortable family. Her father was a stockbroker on the New York Stock Exchange. Her mother was a teacher, taught dancing. But she was a frustrated star. She would tell people that she starred in shows, she starred in the Rockettes, and so on, and Broadway shows. Well, Equity, the union that controls Broadway, has no record of her. The Rockettes, Radio City Music Hall, has no record of her ever working there. She's a liar. She pushed Lindsay into all these things. At 14, her father was arrested for fraud in the stock market. Went to jail for 4 years. The mother takes over raising Lindsay, and she likes to party. She gets Lindsay into modeling. 14, 15-year-old girl. The modeling industry is terrible, particularly for young girls. The mother, again, gets a contract where she gets a good percentage of the money. And again, charges everything to Lindsay Lohan's account. She also, the mother, wants to be young. So when they go to the after-hours clubs in New York, she tells Lindsay, you tell everyone I'm your sister, and I'm much younger than what I am. And she would take her to these after-hours clubs. What do they do in the after-hours clubs? Smoke pot, take drugs, so on. That's what they do. She gets Lindsay into drugs, the mother. And she admits giving Lindsay, she calls them painkillers. Lindsay doesn't have anything wrong with her. She doesn't have any pain. It's drugs that she's giving her. And she also makes her an alcoholic. Now, what mother would do that? Think of your mother having such an ego that she tells you, we're going to go to after-hours clubs, and you tell everyone I'm your sister. And she starts flirting with all the guys there. This is what Lindsay lived with. I don't blame Lindsay. The one that should have gone to jail was the mother. But see, the mothers don't get prosecuted. It's the child that suffers. Lindsay's now a pothead. She's been in jail, out of jail, rehabilitation places. They don't know what to do with her. She's had a number of boyfriends. I won't even get into that. Dina lashes out and says, Lindsay's an alcoholic. She's just a 20-year-old girl who has to reel it in. Reel it in. Well, she's not 20 anymore. She hasn't reeled it in, and she's worse off than she's ever been. What I'm trying to say, I pity the girls. I feel sorry for them. The ones I'm angry at are the parents or the mothers particularly who don't take responsibility for their children. They aren't prosecuted. They don't go to jail. They can sit by and make all kinds of excuses. Lynn Lowenthal says Lindsay's problem is the friends that she keeps. What is she talking about? It's the mother who takes her everywhere. The mother who takes us into all these clubs, everything else. Now, Dina, the mother, I said Lynn, sorry, Dina, she wants to stay young. She goes to Florida, Miami Beach, and she has a big bash at one of the clubs. She is so drunk, she can't find her way out of it. And they literally have to put her in a cab to take her back to the hotel. She paid for the party. Mind you, Lindsay wasn't with her. Lindsay wasn't with her. Dina charges that whole party, and she's ordering Dom Perrier champagne, everything as expensive as can be, and charges it all to Lindsay. You're lucky. I want you to understand it's not as glamorous as it seems. Lindsay Lohan is used goods. What's her life going to be like? She's still a young woman. Where's she going to go? What is she going to do? Who's going to have her? Maybe except for her money. Very, very sad. You have any questions? I'm trying to paint the factual picture. Yes. Yes.
So that's like typically how, I guess, stars are made. Their moms put them into like modeling and stuff.
Right. We had a daughter, very beautiful looking girl, Kathleen, we have. And when she was young, what happened, I had this woman, and she had a lot of contacts with with acting schools and dance schools for small kids. And she came to me and said, Bud, I'd like to set up a department to book kids into modeling. And she had a lot of contacts. I said, I'll do all the work. You let me use your office, and I'll split the commissions with you. I said, fine. So anyway, we're having this big fashion show, pardon me, at the Waldorf in New York. And she calls Rosemary and said, Rosemary, I want to use Kathleen in this modeling show. Rosemary takes her. She takes her backstage. Well, I should have warned my wife what it's like. You got the people running around half naked, swearing, cursing in front of these little kids, and they don't care. Rosemary is furious. She comes after the show, and she said, Bud, Kathleen, or none of my children will ever go on in modeling again. And we never let them model. This went on for about 8 or 9 months. I had this department. And then Betty finds somebody who wants to marry her, and she leaves, and I just closed it down. But I just want all of you to understand, I'm not trying to say the business is terrible, but you must be careful what you do in it. And it's not as glamorous as everyone thinks. If you don't have a healthy home life, you don't have people who really love you for you and not because you're making money for them, you don't have anything. I feel sorry for Lindsay. You all know she's now back being considered for jail again. I don't know what kind of life this is. I don't know how anyone helps her. She's so addicted that I don't think they can. So I don't want to belabor all of this. I don't want to tell you about all the places she went for treatment, Wonderland and things like that. It doesn't matter. She also was being cast for a lot of movies. But in the end, the studios were afraid to take a chance on her. She was cast for one movie, forgot the title of it, never showed up. So now the rest of the studios won't do it. They want her, but they're afraid. She was also charged a year ago with stealing a necklace in a store. Crazy. I don't think she knows what she's doing half the time. And the judge gave her community service, things like that. He didn't put her in jail. But I don't know how you help someone. I don't know what they can do. I just want you to see the other side of it. Don't think, oh boy, look at that. I wish I were like that. Well, so, I tell you, they would give anything to have a normal life. Anyway, she's going to be up again soon on charges. I don't know what they'll do. It's just very sad. You have any questions? I'm not painting a very good picture, am I?
Is that still what happened with Michael Jackson, too? Because he was so young and...
Yeah. Yeah, he was on drugs terribly. I feel sorry. Very talented. There again, you can't blame Michael. His father pushed them. His father took all the money from the Jackson 5. You know Jackson 5? The father took the money. The father pushed them to work. The father pushed them into everything. Sad. Sad. I get very angry because these poor performers, they don't know what's happening to them. They're pushed by their parents, and before they know what it is, they're deep into drugs or whatever it might be. Or they've been working like crazy and they don't have any money. Very sad. Very sad. Any other questions?
Are there examples of actors who are in and then get out for family and then come back in? Can you
Well,
give those
they're good
examples?
actors. So I'm glad you brought, there are a lot of good actors. Tom Hanks is married to Rita Wilson. They've been married for years. They have a family, but he does not go to the clubs. Or his wife. They live a very quiet life out there. Ron Howard, you all know who Ron Howard is? Yes? Okay, Ron Howard, he lives in Connecticut with his family. He has children. He won't live in Hollywood. This is a kid who grew up there. He won't live there. Paul Newman, who died recently, he and his family also live in Connecticut. They don't want any part of what's happening out there. Meryl Streep, right? One of the best actresses of our era. She doesn't live out there. You don't see her in the gossip columns or the trades or the trash papers. Where does she live? She lives in Manhattan, and they have a horse farm in Kentucky. Very close family. So there, Will Smith, you know Will Smith? Boy, he is preem. He and his wife, very close. That guy won't go to a party without her. He won't go to a premiere without, he won't do anything without her. Lovely couple. Lovely. Don't forget what the persona is on screen. Some of them have ugly personas on screen. Some are gangster. It's what they are in real life. He's a great guy. The other one who shocked me, because I gave his wife her first job, Danny DeVito. You would think Danny DeVito was wild, right? Be running after women. No. He married Rhea, I can't think of her last name. She played in the chorus in my first New York show. Yeah. Bye Bye Birdie. Pardon me?
Perma.
Yes, that's it. Lovely girl. They've been married for years. You look on the screen, and you would think this guy is wild. You wouldn't think he'd be faithful, but he is. Very, very strong family life. So there are good people out there, but unfortunately, the press only promotes the ones that make good press. You don't want to hear about someone who has a good marriage. You want to hear about someone who is on drugs, who is this, who gets arrested. That's what the newspapers play up, and it's a shame. But that's where we are. There's another gal. I have no respect for this woman at all. Jennifer Aniston. Now, if you watch television, she looks like the sweetheart of sweethearts. She was married to Brad Pitt. And all the papers said, oh, she left Brad because he was going with Jolie, and Angelina Jolie. Well, that's not true. Why did he leave her? He wanted to have a family, and she would not have kids because she was afraid it would spoil her looks and her shape. She refused to have kids. And he kept saying, but we want a family. Wouldn't do it, and he left her. But that's not what the newspapers said. That's not what those trashy papers said. They blamed him. It's a lie. Then there's a big article in the papers. Poor Jennifer, she has to leave her small bungalow on the beach and move to, not Beverly Hills, on the ocean. Malibu. The Malibu Hills. Well, Malibu Hills, you're talking about $5, $10, $15 million estates. But poor Jennifer has to leave her bungalow that she and Brad owned. That bungalow cost $13 million. Right? I'd like to leave that and sell it. So you cannot believe what you read in the press. Remember, they all have press agents. They all want you to believe what you're reading or seeing to build themselves up. Now, she starred in Marley and what?
Me.
Marley and Me. If you noticed, There were no close-ups of her. None. You look at the movie again. Why? She's getting older. She's 38, 39 years old. She's starting to have jowls. You know, some women age very well, some not so well. So that she didn't have children didn't help her. But what does she do to show the world she's still a young, beautiful woman? She's 38, 39 years old. She takes up with that musician, not Baker. I can't think of his name. It's out of my mind. Anyway, she takes up with him, and she wants to have it advertised. Oh, Mayer. Last name's Mayer. Yeah, John Mayer. She takes up with him. He's down in Miami Beach doing a gig. She flies down there, and there's a big article in all the papers. Aniston and Mayer have a private dinner at this well-known club down there, or restaurant. She rented the whole place, and she says, I rented it so none of the press or anyone would know about it. Well, how did it get in the papers? She told all the paparazzi. That's all that were there. She rented the whole place. There were no people, just her and Mayer and the paparazzi. You cannot believe what you read in the paper. She's no longer a young woman. She doesn't look that great, but she's still trying to be young by going out with a young guy. Now, they're no longer together either. Anyway, I'm only trying to give you some indication of the private life. She's a lonely woman, very alone. She's back trying to get like friends or do movies. She can't act. She absolutely cannot act. I wouldn't cast her as an understudy. She's so bad. But Friends didn't require acting, and it worked. But she has nothing, guys. I believe, ladies, nothing. Sure, she has money, but I want to tell you something. You hit 40 years old. She's 41, maybe 2, and you are all alone in this big mansion. You go home every night and you eat alone. You're not happy. Any questions?
What about the changes in Hollywood as far as the movies and the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and what direction the movies have influenced on culture?
The direction of the movies is to become anti-religious, anti-morals. There are no morals anymore. Okay, let me tell you. Who runs Hollywood today?
Gay mafia.
Thank you, sweetheart. That's right. It's called the gay mafia. 6 out of the 7 studios, the presidents are all gay. And they bring in all their gay friends. Do the gays want to promote marriage between a man and a woman? No. Do they want to promote the sanctity of marriage or sex? No. If you look on television, almost every show today has a gay couple. They're promoting that. They're trying to make America believe it's okay to be gay. Well, I don't think it is. I don't think so. Now, we had a lot of gay friends in Hollywood, so let me qualify that. But our gay friends knew we didn't condone what they did, but neither were we against them as friends. But we didn't accept their behavior in front of us or any of our parties. And they didn't. They behaved very well. We went out with a lot of gay people. I had gay people working for me. You have to in the movie business. But once these people became heads of the studio, their agenda is to promote being gay. They're not, you don't see movies anymore about religion. You don't see any movies about morals, very, very few. Let me ask you, how real is it that you fall in love, you go out with a girl, you jump in bed and you're in love with her the first night? You're not going to love her. You don't know who else she's jumped into bed with. It's so unreal. But they want to make sex okay. They want it to be, well, it's all right to do. Not all right. Not all right. I believe virginity very strongly. And I was out there. Rosemary and I were the odd couple. We went to everything together. We did everything together. We'd go to openings. You know who would want to walk with her? Well, I was busy being sure that the opening went well. The gay guys who worked for me. They wanted to be seen with her.
They protected me.
Right. They did. They did. My wife was very beautiful, particularly when she was young, gorgeous. So they protected her. And they loved taking care of her while I was busy. So it's not that we didn't have a lot of gay friends, but I didn't condone their behavior where they openly are kissing and hugging and getting married. No. I'm totally against it. You have to live by what you believe. You can't say one thing and live another way. But that's what's happening in Hollywood, and that's what's happening in television. Because a lot of the studios today own the TV stations. So who is heading up all of these things? The gays. There is a thing in Hollywood called the gay mafia, which he mentioned. The gay mafia, the head of the gay mafia is Barry Diller, who used to be president of Paramount. The other big wheel in it is David Geffen, who was one of the biggest people in the music business. He also is in the movie business. They brought all the gays in. And this group I'm telling you about, who head up all the studios now, they're called the gay mafia. Now, it's not publicized. You're not going to hear the press put it in all the papers. But in some of the inside papers out there, they are known and called the gay mafia. Very strong. They are controlling what you see in the movies. They are making you want to believe that it's great to be immoral. Great to take a girl out, go sleep with her for the night, you're going to fall in love. Oh, my God. That's nonsense. Nonsense. But that's their agenda. And to make you believe that two guys making love are great. Anyway, that's enough.
What is it about the structure of Hollywood that, maintains a limited number of companies like that? Because you'd think, especially with the development of cable and the internet, there would be in principle, there ought to be a huge number of companies, and yet there seems to be some kind of choke point that really prevents a lot of, a lot more production of movies going forward.
Well, it's very expensive to produce a movie. You take Avatar, or you take, what's the big one now that's out, special effects and everything. Cost $100 and some million. You don't raise that kind of money instantly. Number one. Number two, the studios have a stranglehold on the industry. You can go out and produce a movie. How are you going to get distributed into the theaters? The theaters aren't going to take your picture over a studio's picture. Why? The studio will threaten them. You take that picture, not ours, you won't get any more of our pictures. Oh, it's,
It should be subject, I mean, in principle, if you could show that, theoretically, you should be able to subject that to antitrust action, couldn't you?
They have it all covered.
they have it all covered. They have lawyers upon lawyers. And they have a stranglehold on the industry. That's why there are only 7 studios. Yeah, there are some independent groups like Stallone had one, and Lionsgate, and a few of those. But they produce movies, but they have to depend on the big studios to release them and get them in the theaters. It's a very closed. Let me explain something. There are 7 studios. There are about maybe 8 to 10 top executives at those studios, maximum. So you have 60, 70 people controlling the industry. They control the industry. That's it. It's not big. Everyone thinks the entertainment field, oh, it's gigantic. It's not. You take stars, directors, producers, writers, top ones, top. You may have 100, 150 max. There aren't a lot of stars. How many stars really draw a big audience?
Like 20.
20. Yeah, if you're lucky, 20. That's it. See, there's a misconception because it's so broad and all over the place that there are hundreds and hundreds of people who really operate the business. It's not so. Not so.
Unfortunately, it's very powerful, though.
Extremely powerful. Those. Let me explain something. When I was senior VP of MGM UA, if I went into any restaurant, New York, LA, and they didn't have a table for me right away, or they didn't bring a table out of the back and put it on the floor, I left. And they didn't like that. They would put people, we had to go out on a plane somewhere for a movie, they would move, the plane's booked, they'd throw people off so Rosemary and I could get on. You don't understand the power in Hollywood. Tremendous power. That's why Rosemary was kidding about, she would say to me when I get home, just remember, you got to take out the garbage. Had tremendous ego out there.
You did.
Yes, I did. I'm saying it. You know, you think it's due you. You get to expect it. You don't worry about a cab or something. There's a limo waiting for you. You want to go to the airport, the limo's there. The limo's there when you get to New York, when you get to anywhere. You get to the hotel, you don't carry a bag. The guy carries the bag. They come out right away, take care of you. It's a different world, guys. It's hard to explain. People in that business have tremendous power. Tremendous power for some reason.
So 2 questions. First, how did you decide to get out and why?
Okay. I had been in the business a long time. 29 when I went in. I never started small except that first assistant trainee job, and after that I went into business immediately. I was working for MGM, and we got a new president, new chairman. They wanted me to put it, what happened, we had MGM UA corporate, and then we had MGM UA subsidiaries. Well, the subsidiaries are the ones who really produce the movies. And you had Alan Ladd in charge of MGM, Tony Tomopoulos, who was very, very big in television, head of UA. The guys who were chairman and president of MGM UA, one was the finance man at a television company, knew nothing about the movie business, and he hires a lawyer who knows nothing about the business too. So the 2 guys, Tomopoulos and Laddie, they don't want anything to do with them. They decide on themselves what movies they're going to make, everything else. Lee Rich, who was the chairman, right, head of MGM UA, he doesn't like that they're cutting him out. So he calls me and he said, Bud, I want you to put in a procedure whereby 5 of us have to approve the movies and the marketing cost. We'll use the marketing cost as an excuse. That if we don't think the movie's going to do well, no marketing. Who was on the committee? The chairman, the president, the new senior vice president of distribution, who they hired and was right under their thumb, me, and if it was an MGM picture, then Tomopoulos from UA was on it. If it was a UA picture, Laddie was on it. Well, that was 2 against 3. So they were going to be able to control the movies. I wouldn't do it because they didn't know anything about the movie business. I go to Laddie and I tell Laddie, Laddie, they're going to throw me out of here. I'll be gone within a few days. He said, no, you're not. He said, they can't hire or fire anyone without my approval. It had it in the contract. And Laddie was like his father. You ever see Alan Ladd Sr. in the movies? Very quiet, subdued, never raised his voice. Well, that's what Laddie Jr.'s like. So I thought, well, he's not worried. He seems perfectly calm and accepting, and that's it. 2 days later, he meets Krikorian, who owns MGM, in the elevator. And he starts blasting Krikorian for hiring these other 2 guys, and they get into a heated argument. In 2 hours, it's all over the movie business. The next morning, Laddie's fired. A week later, I'm fired. And I left. And I had offers to stay in the business, but I'd been in it 40 years. I could literally produce or market or promote a show with my eyes closed. It was no longer a challenge. What, honey?
I'm not saying a word.
So I left. Now, I did do consulting. I consulted on Rambo's. I consulted with Schwarzenegger on what's the one where he blows everything up?
Terminator.
Yeah.
Actually, that sounds like almost an issue.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. And a few. Some of the others. I was a consultant on it. They paid me very well, and that was it.
So you're more going like from job to job, like.
I was an independent.
Okay, yeah.
And non-exclusive. So I could do 2, 3 films at a time, and they were paying me $5,000 a week each. So I didn't let them pay me, right? But at a given point, I just got bored with the business. It was no longer a challenge. When you're in it so many years, the excitement is gone. I ran so many opening nights, premieres, so on. Rosemary and I went to a number of Academy Awards and all. So the glow was gone, and I left. That was it.
Did you do something after that, or did you like?
After the consulting?
After you were like done with the film industry, did you retire? Or did
Yeah,
you...
I did the consulting, and then we retired. We moved to Florida. Now we'd go back, but I would go back to Hollywood 3, 4 times a year. And one of the times, they asked me if some friends called and said, "Come on, I want to take you to lunch." At lunch, they said, "Would you be interested in being vice president, senior vice president of marketing for the new studio that was opening,
Dreamworks?
Yeah. Well, Rosemary didn't want any more or any part of Hollywood anymore. She had had it. We lived in a beautiful place in Florida on an island, and I said no. The other thing they didn't realize was my age. They thought I was 60 years old. I was 69, but I looked very young. And I knew once they found my age, they wouldn't want me. They wanted someone who they could count on for 5, 6 years. Wasn't me. So I didn't take the job. I left Hollywood. And I haven't I miss it once in a while. But it's like everything. My day was past.
Yeah.
It was over.
But so today, if you wanted to, I don't know, just call up someone that you knew from Hollywood, would you still have any connections out there? Or?
The last time I was there, Arnie, remember Arnie from the one who moved my parking space?
Yeah. Okay.
Arnie was the last senior VP at the studio at MGM-UA when I went out there. But it was no longer MGM-UA. It was owned by Columbia and whatever the parent company is. We go to lunch, and there's not a soul I knew. And this executive dining room is so quiet. I said, Arnie, what's the matter? He said, Bud, no one trusts anyone. Everyone's afraid that someone else is going to take their job. He said, the best years at MGM-UA were the years that you were here. I want to tell you, I left that day, went home, told Rosemary what happened. I never went back again. Very disheartening. You know, it was just all changed. So yes, they did offer me the job. I didn't take it for reasons I explained. I think about it once in a while. You know, I'm human, but I immediately say, I could laugh. You don't realize the hours in the business. You're not working 8 to 5. There were many mornings I had breakfast at 6:30 in Beverly Hills. We lived at 45 minutes away. You don't go home at night at 5. I never got out of the office till 6:30, 7 o'clock. You go home, you can't say to your wife and your children, listen, if the phone rings, tell them I'm not here. You have a movie costing $55,000 an hour. What are you going to tell them? You're not there? It's Friday night. Tell them to call me Monday morning. You might as well quit, because you'll be out of there. So you don't have all this freedom. You are really wrapped up in the business. It becomes your life. And we had just had enough. We loved it. I have to tell you, I encourage anyone who wants to go in to do it, just know it's a tough business. Very tough, yes.
How do you get into the business?
How?
First? Yeah. I know you told your story at the beginning.
Yeah, okay. I was working as an assistant trainee, as I said, at a concert management firm. I was earning $75. I told you, I was married, had 3 kids, everything else. Couldn't live on it. So another fellow and I decided we would open up the only off-Broadway concert hall in New York. And we finally found a church, a Hungarian church, with a big, big basement. And we said to the pastor, we would like to promote concerts here. It was on East 69th Street between 2nd and 1st Avenue. And we said we would give them, we couldn't pay a rental fee, but we would give them 10% of the gate if they would let us do it. Well, I had a lot of chutzpah. You know what chutzpah is? Guts in those days. No brains, but a lot of chutzpah. Anyway, I get lumber company from some friends of the family. They donate the lumber for the stage. Rosemary makes these heavy damask drapes, 12 by 30 feet long.
Middle of my living room floor with boxes.
Yes, that literally separated the lobby from where the audiences sat. We painted the whole basement. Half of the wall, the top was gold, the other half blue. I go to a place on 14th Street, a carpet place, Kelly's. And I tell the owner, and everything I said was for the church. Okay? So I said, the church wants to promote young artists. We don't have any money. We need carpeting. He said, you know, I just got the carpet from the Paramount Theater, which closed in New York. He said, I'll give you pieces. He said, now some have worn spots. First he said, oh, you'll have to cut them. I said, I'll cut them out for you. Well, some of the pieces were this big, some were that big. My wife and my sister-in-law, at 1:30 in the morning, were nailing those pieces down to make a carpet for the theater. She made the curtains. I helped build the theater, the stage. And then for lights, this will interest you. The company I'd been working for, one of the vice presidents there, his son-in-law, had just graduated from Manhattan. And he was interested in going into the lighting business in the theater. So my friend said to me, would you give my son-in-law the chance to do the lighting? I said, sure. I said, but I can't pay him. See, we had no money. So he came along, and he got all the lights for $65. Sounds good, right? At that moment, I didn't have the $65. Rosemary had gone to Best & Company, the department store in Manhattan, bought the first dress she was able to buy in 2 years. I come home and I said, honey, the dress cost $35. I said, honey, I need that money. You have to take the dress back.
I can still draw a picture of it exactly.
So she took the dress back. I used that money to pay for the lights. We did everything like that with no money. But I want to tell you about this young man. There was a place called Basin Street East in New York. It was a nightclub, just opening. And he went there and applied for the job to do the lighting and sound. And he gave me as a reference. So they called me. I gave him a glowing recommendation. He did a great job for us. Dimmers, everything, $65. The first night, the opening act for the first week opening, which is the throwaway act, was Barbra Streisand. She asked him if he would do a lighting design for her act. And she couldn't pay him. He said gladly. He did all the lighting for her when she was there and gave her the lighting design. She never, ever let go of him. He still does her lighting till this day. But now he's big. He also did the lighting for Sinatra, for that whole crew. And he also does the lighting for the Kennedy Center in Washington. All out of that job. Yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, that's life in the theater and the movies.